Our lab was about the corrosiveness of acids. The problem we investigated was that we wanted to determine which of the four acids is the most corrosive to magnesium. We examined how reactive each one is based on how much it changes the mass of the metal, how quick the reactions occur, and the structure of each acid's molecules. Some definitions that will be important are corrosion and molarity. For this experiment, we used goggles and gloves for safety since we're handling dangerous substances. We also needed a balance to find masses, a 10 milliliter graduated cylinder to measure volumes of the acids, test tubes to do the reactions in, a test tube stand, paper towels, a glass stirring rod, and 4 magnesium strips that are measured out to be 6 centimeters long each. We also made 100 milliliters of each 1 molar hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, acetic acid, and nitric acid. Here's a short video of our lab. We will discuss the procedure as it occurs.
First, we put on goggles and gloves before handling any chemicals. Then we cut 4 strips of magnesium that are 6 centimeters long each and took the mass of each strip and recorded to the hundredths place in a table. We measured 6 milliliters of each acid, 1 molar, in 4 graduated cylinders and placed each acid in a separate test tube. Then we labeled the first test tube as hydrochloric acid, number 1, the second as sulfuric acid, number 2, the third as acetic acid, number 3, and the fourth as nitric acid, number 4. We loosely folded up each strip of magnesium so that once placed in the acid, the whole piece will be submerged. We placed 1 magnesium strip into each of the 4 test tubes, making sure they all were placed in at the same time. After letting the strips soak in the acid for 7 minutes, we used a glass stirring rod to take out the pieces of magnesium and place them on a paper towel to dry them off. Once the magnesium pieces were dry, we took the mass of each piece, again recording to the hundredths place. We then took the mass of each of the metal pieces after soaking in acid and subtracted that from the mass of it before soaking in acid. This gave us the difference of the mass of the metal before and after reacting with the acid. After massing, we cleaned up our lab by throwing the magnesium strips in the garbage and pouring the acids into a waste beaker. Then we washed the test tubes out carefully with soap and water and dried them with a paper towel.
We had several observations during our experiment. First, we noticed that the sulfuric acid reacted much more violently with the magnesium than the other 3 acids. It only took about a few minutes for the reaction to completely occur, and at the end there was no magnesium left. We also noticed that all 4 of the reactions were exothermic because the test tubes were very hot to the touch. We also noticed that in run 2, the hydrochloric acid broke down so much that we were unable to calculate its mass because it was in all little pieces rather than one large hunk of magnesium that we could pull out of the test tube. After 7 minutes, when we stopped the reactions by pulling out the magnesium strips, we noticed that the hydrochloric acid and the acetic acid were still reacting in the test tube with the magnesium. However, the sulfuric acid had completely finished reacting and there was no magnesium left. The nitric acid also finished reacting, but most of the magnesium metal was still left over. So here's a picture of the magnesium metals that we took out of the test tubes after the 7 minutes were up. On the left, the 2 pieces on the left are the magnesium that reacted with the hydrochloric acid. These pieces turned black, and it's actually one piece that we put into the test tube. It actually split in the test tube. Like we said before, the sulfuric acid fully reacted with the magnesium, so there was nothing left for us to look at in any of the runs. On the right are the magnesium strips that reacted with the nitric and acetic acid. They both look about the same as when we put them in, very silver still, and there wasn't much color change or change to the physical properties than the hydrochloric acid one.
For our data, we first recorded the masses of each magnesium strip. Then we recorded the mass of them after they reacted with the acid for 7 minutes and subtracted this from the original mass. This way we could see how much mass was lost in each reaction, and we could also determine which acid corroded the metal the most. As you can see, the magnesium strip in the sulfuric acid was completely gone, whereas the strip in hydrochloric acid lost 0.07 grams, and the one in nitric acid lost 0.06 grams. The acetic acid reacted the least with the magnesium. It only corroded 0.03 grams during the 7 minutes of reaction. The results for the other 2 runs were very similar.
Our results showed how each acid reacted with magnesium in a slightly different way. Based on how much mass was left of each magnesium strip after reacting, it's easy to conclude that sulfuric acid was the strongest acid when molarity was a constant. Hydrochloric acid was the second strongest, and nitric acid was the third strongest. Acetic acid reacted the least with magnesium out of all of the acids. However, based on Lewis dot structures of each of the acids, we can conclude that the number of bonds a molecule has and its size does not affect the strength of the acid. For example, the hydrochloric acid reacted much more than the acetic acid, despite having only one bond and an overall smaller molecule. We were unable to conclude why each acid was as strong as it was, or how the structure of each acid's molecules affected its strength. One source of error we encountered was that we were unable to make every magnesium strip the exact same size or mass. This may have decreased the before and after mass difference of the strips, since certain pieces would have a slightly smaller surface area, so less material is reacting with acid at a given point. Another source of error was that when we massed the magnesium pieces after the reactions, there was remaining acid residue on the strips. This would have made the masses slightly larger than if it was just the strip alone.
As a follow-up experiment, we could test the acids on other substances such as organic matter, fruits or leaves, and other stuff, or other synthetic materials such as styrofoam and plastic utensils to see if the sulfuric acid would still be the strongest acid out of the 4 we tested. With our experiment, we only tested them on one metal, so we only know the results for the one metal. In the future, we would also incorporate the concepts we just learned about spontaneity and equilibrium to further delve into the results and reasons why each acid worked as much as it did, and how spontaneous each was despite the rate of reaction. At the time, we didn't know this information, so our results weren't as thorough as we would have hoped. A possible explanation question would be how could the molarity of the acids used have affected the results? Also, how would the results have been different if a higher concentration of each acid was used? This would belong to the molarity and spontaneity unit.